All right, so today we're going to keep moving along with simplifying rational expressions. So the first one I set up here, everything's already factored to try and keep it as straightforward as possible as far as your main steps with these problems. Your big first step is to figure out those restrictions. And again, restrictions are when the denominator is equal to 0. Your denominator cannot equal 0 on these problems. So you want to do that first before we start to simplify anything and reduce things. So let's take care of that first here. I'm just going to put that on the side. All right, so again, restrictions are when the denominator equals 0. Okay, so any term in the denominator, you want to set that equal to 0. So first up is the x plus 4. So that means you're going to get x equals negative 4, so x cannot equal negative 4. And then 2x minus 4 equals 0, so you get 2x equals 4. So x cannot equal 2. So those are your two restrictions. Because again, if I put negative 4 in here, negative 4 plus 4 is 0, you're going to have division by 0. Again, if you don't believe me, type in something like 8 divided by 0 in your calculator. It's going to tell you domain error. It doesn't work. Over here, if I put 2 in, 2 times 2 is 4. 4 minus 4 is 0. You get 0 in the denominator. So again, first thing you always want to do is figure out those restrictions. And that's when the original denominator, let me put original, okay, do those restrictions before you start to factor and simplify, okay? Take those original denominators, set them equal to 0. So next up, if you want to write this as one big fraction, I just want to rewrite this so that you guys can see the original. And then how I reduce, I don't want to start crossing stuff out in that original. But again, this is multiplication, so you just can write the whole thing out. Multiplication is your friend with fractions. All right, in the denominator, write x plus 4 times 2x minus 4. Okay, so then when it comes to reducing, you're looking for the same binomial or the same monomial in both the numerator and denominator. So in my case, x minus 1, there's no other x minus 1s here. 2x minus 4, there's a 2x minus 4 in the denominator. So 2x minus 4 divided by 2x minus 4 is 1. So those reduce. There's no other x plus 1s. I got x plus 4 divided by x plus 4 is 1 as well. So what I'm left with in my numerator is x minus 1 times x plus 1. And again, x cannot equal negative 4, and x cannot equal 2. If you'd want to multiply this out, you'd get x squared minus 1. It's a difference of squares. Again, don't forget those restrictions. X cannot equal negative 4, and x cannot equal 2. Okay? So, in a problem like this, you just want to make sure that you take care of those denominators first, set them equal to 0, and then go 1 for 1 as far as identical binomials in the numerator and denominator. Okay? So the next problem, we got a little bit more work to do. We have to do a lot more factoring. But again, the first thing I want to do in this problem is figure out those restrictions. So for my restrictions, I'm going to take this first one, x squared plus 7x minus 18 equals 0. To solve that, I got to factor it. So factors of negative 18 that have a difference of 7. So 9 and 2, I want to go x plus 9 times x minus 2 equals 0. All right, again, I would get 9x minus 2x to give me my 7x. So I got x plus 9 equals 0, and x minus 2 equals 0. So x equals negative 9, x cannot equal negative 9, and x cannot equal 2. So that first one gave us two restrictions. You still got to do the second denominator, though. So we have x squared minus 11x plus 18 equals 0. So it's a positive 18. Your factors are going to have the same signs. Your factors have to add up to 11. So 2 and 9 will add up to 11. So I got to go x minus 2 times x plus 9 equals 0. Or x minus 9, sorry. That should be a minus 9 right there. So x minus 2 equals 0. We get x cannot equal 2, which is a repeat from before, which is fine. And then x minus 9 equals 0, so x cannot equal positive 9. So I have 4 listed right now, but we go to write our final answer here. The 2's repeat, so you're only end up with really 3 restrictions on the denominator here. But next up, we want to factor everything. We already factored the denominator, so we kind of already took out half that work. All right, so notice like your denominators here. This one goes x squared minus 2x. We're going to need to factor out a GCF of x here. This one's x squared minus 81. There's no x here. This is a difference of squares. So 2 different types of factoring. The main reason that the main difference is x squared x. This is x squared, then a constant. So, that kind of like set off the alarms for me about how they're different types of factoring. So that first denominator, x squared and x, we can factor out an x from both those. So I get x times x minus 2 is my complete factorization of that numerator. Denominator, we already said, x plus 9 times x minus 2 times x squared minus 81, difference of squares, so x minus 9 times x plus 9. The order doesn't matter. That's a beautiful thing with doing multiplication all around here, is that order doesn't matter. Denominator, we already said, was x minus 2 times x minus 9. All right, so a couple good things to talk about here. You don't have to do this next step. I'm just going to write it all as one big fraction because it is multiplication. And I wanted you to be able to see my complete factoring without me starting to cross things out, making it all sloppy here. So we got x plus 9, x minus 2, we got another x minus 2, and then x minus 9. All right, so first up, I would just start with your x. Are there any other x's in the denominator? And there's not. So the x is going to keep on going here. Next up, I have x minus 2 divided by x minus 2. Notice, x minus 2 divided by x minus 2 is 1. This one stays. All right. This would be something like down here, if I had, let's say I had, let's say I had something like this, or how about like this, 6 divided by 6 times 6, this is 636, I'm still left with 1/6. One of those 6's is still left there, okay? So that's why you can only go 1 for 1 on these. I have an x minus 9 divided by x minus 9. So those reduce down to 1. X plus 9 divided by x plus 9 is also 1. So what I'm left with is an x in the numerator and an x minus 2 in the denominator. And again, don't forget about those restrictions. X cannot equal 2, and x cannot equal positive 9 and negative 9. Okay? So I know there's a good amount of work. You gotta write a lot of stuff out. This step's kind of optional in here. You don't have to do this. I'm just writing this so that you can see my complete factorization. I don't start crossing things out for you. Just take your time with these. I'm not assigning a lot of problems with them, but I want you to take your time and be careful. They're really not problems to rush through, okay? All right, so I got one more of these. Again, there's my final answer. All right, so first up, let's do those restrictions. Lots of difference of squares here, by the way. Taking my first denominator, set it equal to 0. X minus 1 times x plus 1 equals 0. So I have x minus 1 equals 0 and x plus 1 equals 0. So x cannot equal 1 and x cannot equal negative 1. This one factor in x minus 3 times x plus 3. So x cannot equal 3 and x cannot equal negative 3. So you're going to have 4 restrictions on your denominator. So let's factor this thing. Numerator on the first one, factors of 4. It's positive 4, so they're going to be the same sign. Add up to 5, so 4 and 1. So I'm going to go x minus 1, x minus 4. Denominator, we already said x minus 1 times x plus 1. Second numerator, factors of 4 that add up to 5. Pretty similar to the first one, just make it pluses. And then x minus 3 times x plus 3. All right, so moving on here, I'm just going to write this as one big fraction, just so you guys can keep seeing my factoring here. X minus 4. Alrighty, so as far as starting to factor or simplify everything, I have x minus 1 divided by x minus 1 is 1. I also have x plus 1 divided by x plus 1 is also 1. So I am left with two binomials in the numerator, x minus 4 times x plus 4, and in the denominator, x minus 3 times x plus 3. All right, if you want, again, your restrictions are x cannot equal positive and negative 1, and x cannot equal positive and negative 3. You can multiply these out, get x squared minus 16, denominator x squared minus 9, and again, x cannot equal positive and negative 1, and x cannot equal positive and negative 3. All right, so this would be like the nicest looking final answer, I think. Certainly that would be correct. On like a Schoology quiz, I would probably end up writing it like this. Okay, so for today, I do have another short Schoology quiz for you. Checkpoint, I'm just counting those like classwork grades here. All right. So have a good day, and if you got any questions, email me.